Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today in the 82nd installment of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. Last time we had a fairly religious topic when we talked about Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her place in our history. Today we will delve into the nexus of religion, Christianity, in particular Catholicism, and the academia, particularly the libraries, the heart of every educational body. In this session, Mr. Martin Perez will walk us through the development of libraries vis-a-vis Christianity in the Philippines. But before we start, uh, I'd like to remind everyone again of our house rules. For Zoom attendees, you may raise your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of our screen, while for those viewing us via Facebook Live, you may raise your questions in the comment section. If you wish to remain anonymous, please let us know, or or if or you may opt to change your display name. Also, only those who have successfully registered and viewed on Zoom will be eligible to get a certificate. A feedback form will be emailed to you after the session, and the certificate will be sent within a week. Lastly, please note that this webinar is recorded, and the recording shall be made permanently available in IA social media channels. So let us proceed. Okay, our speaker for today is Mr. Martin Julius V. Perez. He is a Foreign Service staff employee and one of the Communications and Records Officer of the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA. He is also a part-time lecturer on Archives and Records Management in the School of Library and Information Studies of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He obtained his bachelor's degree in Library and Information Science in 2011 with distinction of magna cum laude, and currently finishing the Master of Library and Information Science, both from UP Diliman. He is a licensed librarian and ranked second in the 2011 Librarians Licensure Examination in the Philippines. Martin formerly worked as a part-time librarian and archivist for the Santo Domingo Convent Archives and Library. As library assistant and then librarian for the Far Eastern University Library, and as a librarian for the Carlos P. Romulo Library of the Foreign Service Institute. He has served as a resource speaker in the DFA and outside the agency, including professional associations on various library records and archives-related topics. He is also active in participating and presenting papers and posters in international conferences on LIS and archival studies. In 2015, he was one of the 5 fellows selected to participate in the J. Jordan IFLA OCLC Early Career Development Fellowship Program in the US. So without further ado, I'm calling on our speaker, Mr. Martin Perez. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Intramuros administration. Thank you to Mr. Arcilia and Mr. Katahan for the invitation. So allow me to share my slides. Okay, so let me begin. So maraming salamat po Intramuros administration. I hope you can hear me clearly in your end, and I'm a librarian and I'm an archivist, and I'm currently working for the Department of Foreign Affairs Archives, but I would like to make a disclaimer that this research is not related to my work. And this research was part of an academic topic which I presented and published in 2014 and 2015. So pag history naman, mostly it's still applicable, or we still learn so much from history when we discuss. So just to give you an overview, as I've said, itong research ko, or this research that I will present to you this afternoon, is actually first published in the Paaral Research Journal together with a co-author. So it's Mr. Mark Ellis Pineda, who is also a librarian, a licensed librarian, who formerly worked for the Archbishop Gabriel M. Reyes Memorial Library. So it's the San Carlos Seminary Library, and we work together to come up with this research. And this research was also published in a book by the Cambridge scholars with the same title, Role of Catholicism in the Development of Libraries in the Philippines. So I would like to begin with the topics to be discussed with you this afternoon. So I will cover libraries and religion, Christianity in general, and particularly Catholicism in the Philippines, Catholicism and the development of libraries in the Philippines, and a few conclusions from the discussion. So the first part of my presentation for this afternoon would be the role or the link between libraries and religion. So they say that the link between libraries and religion is one of the oldest and the most important relationship in the history of library development. In the early days, libraries in the form of repositories for records were often found in temples and were cared by priests or monks and by the educated slaves. The context and content of these earliest texts and records are of religious nature. So we learned that from our history. And the motivation and efforts to keep them and distribute and promote this are authorized by the religious authorities. And there's a research by Snyder in 2009 that further shows the evidence between historical of religion and libraries through historical relationship. So this relationship between libraries and religion has been discussed in many literature extensively, and it spans from the Western to the Oriental civilization of the world. So hindi lang yan nakafocus sa isang part ng history. It is manifested in the Western history and also in the Oriental history. I will give you examples later. So, Peterson in an article has concluded that the great medieval monastic libraries and their scriptoria have had their birth from the book collecting activity necessary to support the monastic form of individual prayer life. So, yung copy-paste or yung kinokopya, yung text from one script to another. So that's one way nakapag-collect ng maraming mga scripts in the monastic libraries. And the monks' daily work of copying texts, which evolved from farm to the scriptorium, aided the monk in memorizing them for prayer. So yun yung reason. In this way, work and prayer were melted together with the monk's life. Later on, it becomes customary for monasteries to lend texts to other monasteries, giving birth to the interlibrary loan. So yun yung manifestation ng earliest form of interlibrary loan. So interlibrary loan is a technical term in libraries wherein one library loans a material to another library for its use and maybe for the use of its clients. So with this development, the ancient wisdom was saved from its rebirth at the Renaissance, a truly significant contribution to the history of Western culture. There's no doubt in a way or another that monastic libraries represent the heart of Western learning for more than 1,000 years. On the other side of the world, as I have said, based on historical research done in 2013 by Rana Wira and Rana Singhe, it is evident that the early libraries of Sri Lanka were started in the monasteries with the influence of Buddhism. So if we can see in the religions before in my first discussion would be the Christian religion. So in this side of the world, in the Oriental side, Buddhism. Here we have Buddhism as an example. Gathered literature showed that the literary activities and libraries were maintained in an excellent manner during the Anuradhapura period, the ancient citadel and more or less the heart and soul of the religious and cultural heritage of Sri Lanka. They also noted that the Buddhist monks and high-ranking officials were the main users of the monastic libraries functioned in their period of Anuradhapura kingdom, this is a clear manifestation that religion is a catalyst to the development of libraries. So we have an example of the Christian religion, and now we have in the Buddhism. So this is just one example in a country, in Sri Lanka. So what more in other countries where there are other religions? In the Catholic Church now, libraries are traditionally viewed as a key resource. In fact, in monasteries of the medieval times, the library was simply called armarium, a closet where treasures are stored like spiritual and intellectual arsenal. This position on libraries was further expounded in the March 1994 religious letter of the Pontifical Commission of the Cultural Patrimony of the Church, stating that the mere existence of ecclesiastical libraries, of which many are of ancient foundation and extraordinary cultural value, constitute a decisive testimony to its irrevocable effort of the Church towards a spiritual heritage, documented by a library tradition which she considers at the same time as both good of her own and as a universal good place at the service of human society. So this quotation or these lines from the Pontifical Commission of the Cultural Patrimony of the Church gives a clear link between religion and libraries, particularly in the Catholic Church. To give light to this position, a study by Chancellor in 2022 examined the relationship of early history of the profession with religion, and even more specifically, the Catholic Church. Through citing monastery libraries, the production of manuscript and books, and the design of classification system to organize resources by monks, and as well as the Union Catalog, as she has pointed out in the research, she concluded that the Catholic Church played a pivotal role in the historical development of libraries and the library and information science profession in general. The findings of the study support that the Catholic Church position that is participated in determinate of ways towards the molding of the cultural institutions, such as the library, often with an innovative impulse and with long-enduring results through direct and indirect influence with regards to the specific evolution of library institutions. So, there. Okay. So, since the title of my presentation is Christianity, I'm sure many of us are familiar with Christianity because last year we celebrated the 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines. And Christianity is a broad or a major religion. It's a major religion that covers a lot of faith, a lot of faiths. So Christianity as a major stemming religion from the life and teachings and death of Jesus Christ. So that's why it becomes Christianity from Christ of the first century. It has become the largest of the world's religion and in terms of geography and most widely diffused of all faiths. Kasi there are different denominations within Christianity. Its constituency, as they recorded, is about 2 billion believers. And some of the largest group that covers Christianity are the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox churches, and the Protestant churches. In the Philippines, we have celebrated last year, 2021, the 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines, which the entry of Christianity in the Philippines began in 1521 when Magellan, actually through, and as depicted by this painting by Vicente Manansala, the planting of the first cross in Cebu. So yun yung beginnings ng Christianity, which is also the celebration, the beginning of the celebration being commemorated by last year's event with the theme gifted to give by the Catholic Church here in the Philippines. So there. So now I choose to discuss Catholicism because, as I mentioned, this is the form of Christianity that was first introduced to us, and also this is the form of Christianity that is widely being practiced or being believed by most Filipinos. So Catholicism, being the most popular religion in the Philippines, became the springboard for development of early libraries in the context of religion. Catholicism in the Philippines, based on historical facts, was interpreted in two extreme ways, wherein Catholicism was completely imposed on natives through the use of superior military, political, and cultural force. And the other one is Catholicism rescued the native society from pagan and uncivilized darkness. So, a short overview of Catholicism in the Philippines, or the Catholic Church. It started with the arrival of the Spaniards in 1521, and during this period of conquest, several religious groups or orders arrived in the Philippines. First were the Augustinians, who came with Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's expedition to the Philippines and built the Church of St. Paul, would later be known as the San Agustin Church. The Franciscans were the next to enter the Philippines in 1578 and created their typical town designed common today in the Philippines. And then the Jesuits came next, whose primary focus was the evangelization of the southern part of the Philippines, but was later expelled under the decree of Charles II in 1768. This led a great loss in both on the ministry work and education until their return in 1859. And then came next are the Dominicans, who arrived with Domingo de Salazar, the first Archbishop of Manila, and built the University of Santo Tomas, the oldest standing Catholic university in Asia. And the last religious order to arrive in the Philippines were the Augustinian Recollects. So the Synod of Manila is one of the greatest achievement of the first Bishop of Manila. It is started in 1581 and ended in 1586. The problem discussed in the Synod were mainly related to the legality of the Spanish conquest and the best means to bring the Filipino to the knowledge of the Christian faith. So by the end of the 18th century, the Philippines experienced progress, and the Filipinos were happy and full of energy and optimism pervaded the land. But during the 19th century, the friars who have defended the welfare of the people for centuries started putting the interest of Spain above the interest of the Philippines. They paid allegiance to Spain even if all times they had difference in functionalities. The situation of Catholicism in the Philippines changed during the period of American colonization. They reorganized the education system and created the public school system. In spite of this, Catholicism adapted quickly to its new system. Francisco, in an article in 2000, noted that the defeat of the Spaniards may have worked to the advantage of the Catholicism in the Philippines. The new religious order established Catholic schools within the Commonwealth framework of the government of the Philippines. The separation from politics enabled groups within Catholicism to engage in different social problems, especially the problem of land tenancy in the 1930s up to the 1950s. In 1945, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines was formed. So its purpose was to unify and to coordinate the Filipino Catholics in the work of education, social welfare, religious, and spiritual aid under the direction of the Filipino bishops. So the history of Catholicism in the Philippines showed that the Catholic Church really played a pivotal role in the formation of the Philippines as we know it today. Quoting Jesuit historian Father John Schumacher, whether one is a believing Catholic or not, the development of the Filipino nation cannot be understood without the knowledge of a major, often decisive role that the Church has played, well or ill, or positive or negative, in all the process and continues to play. So, we can say that the Catholic Church doesn't emerge from history unscathed. It is not so surprising why it retains an overwhelming majority of the population. So given this context, and as we mentioned that history and the role and religion are intertwined in the Philippine development, so we researchers, or I and Mr. Pineda, tried to understand the role of Catholicism, of this religion, to the development of libraries. So which leads me to the next part of my presentation, which would be the Catholicism and the development of libraries in the Philippines. Guided by the historical socio-cultural pattern in the development of libraries, similar to what I have mentioned in the earlier part of my presentation, as well as the literature review that shows the evident link between religion and libraries, the role of Catholicism in the development of libraries in the Philippines was sought in this study. And based on our research, there would be three themes in the role or in its link. So these themes can be direct or indirect in its contribution. So it includes the first collections and convent libraries. Next is Catholicism education and libraries, and lastly, religious collection and religious libraries. Let us begin with the first collections and the convent libraries. So as I have mentioned a while ago, the sequence of the religious order that arrived in the Philippines, wherein they brought the practices of monastic life or the religious life from the from Spain specifically. This led to the development of the first collections and the first libraries in the convents where they stationed, or where they began. So let me, okay. Yeah. In the Philippines, on the library side naman, the history of libraries in the Philippines is often linked with the country's political and colonial history. So yun yung often na springboard when we discuss library history in the Philippines. So one springboard would be the Spanish colonization, or the Spaniards bringing materials to the Philippines, or maybe establishing the first libraries, which I will be discussing this afternoon. But there are also some speculation that there could have been books or whatever form that have existed in the Philippines during the pre-colonial period, as we say, or the period before the Spaniard came. But there is an absence of records that could prove this hypothesis, and this is a major setback in the library history. So it is believed that the first libraries in the Philippines were established by religious orders. So it was described that these religious orders have sought their books and their library tradition through their first private collections and convent libraries that are mostly concentrated on books relating to the Christian religion and morality. One explanation for this is the royal law that forbids the shipping of non-Christian books to the Spanish colonies, which was enforced in the Philippines, including the Philippines. This further explains the slow proliferation of libraries in the Philippines during the early years of Spanish colonization, because when we discuss of libraries, of course, the availability of different materials of different subjects, but during this time, only Christian books or books relating to religion and morality were been part of the first collection. Although the Spanish religious efforts were concentrated on the spread of religious literature, Hernandez in 1996 has noted that they have contributed beyond this, because the early libraries also established the first library regulations. So we have library regulations, the first printing press, and the first book trade in the Philippines. They have learned to use this knowledge for the benefit of the field of mission evangelization. The early libraries in the Philippines may have existed during these early years of the Spanish colonization, but the first documented reference to an existence of a library in the island of the Philippines was in the letter of Philip II to Philip II by Father Domingo de Salazar, the first bishop of Manila, on June 18, 1583, complaining about the destruction of a very good library in the fire which consumed his living quarter. So yun yung first evidence ng good library in the Philippines through that was documented. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are various religious orders that arrived in the Philippines. So let us try to see what the contribution of these religious orders. By the way, this is a summary of the research done by Vicente Hernandez in 1993, published in his book, History of Libraries in the Philippines, and which we tried to highlight specifically those related to religion. So let us begin with the Augustinian libraries, which includes the library they established in the Augustinian Convent in San Pablo in Intramuros in 1607, which the highlights of this library includes 1,000 rare titles of materials, which includes the Graphike and sorry, I'm not so sure with the pronunciation, but the book Alexandri oldest book in the library is this title. So yeah. Father Agustin Maria de Castro was considered as the first known librarian in the Philippines and the greatest Augustinian bibliographer. Father Policarpio Hernandez, the library used to be, according to him, bibliographer Father Policarpio Hernandez. Okay, he's the bibliographer, and this library was used to be located in the upper cloister, facing Santa Potenciana Street above the sacristy. So you can just imagine where it is. So this is a photo of the San Agustin Library as it was in the end of the 19th century. And this is a photo coming from Pedro Galende as cited by Hernandez in 1996. Other libraries established by the Agustinian includes the Library of the Parish of Bawan, Batangas, which existed from 1596 to 1928 and was destroyed by fire. The Library of the Agustinian Convent in Cebu in 1768, which contained 2,000 good and rare books. The Library of the Agustinian Orphanage of Malabon, which existed until 1896 and actually was confiscated by the new Philippine Republic, and the Library of the Escuela Normal Superior de Maestras, the school that was run by the Agustinian nuns of the Assumption from 1892 to 1898. Following these, as part of the first collection and the first libraries, were the Franciscan Libraries, in which they have established the Library of the Convent of Our Lady of Angels or maybe Angeles in Intramuros in 1578 to 1946, which includes 8,000 books, and the listed librarians includes Father Cristobal Belda, Father Cipriano Gonzalez, and Father Antonio de Vidales. Another library that they established is the Library of the Santa Ana Church. Next are the Dominicans. The Dominicans established the Library of the Dominican College of Manila in 1605 to 1611, which received the Archbishop Benavides collection and then later on was absorbed by the University of Santo Tomas. So yung alam naman natin that the library of the UST is named after Archbishop Benavides because the first collection or the core collection of the library are the books of Archbishop Benavides. So they also established the Library of the University of Santo Tomas in 1611 as an educational institution with 12,000 volume of rare books, and the Lagera Judaica by Flavius Josephus circa 79 AD is the oldest book in the library, as this was the findings of Hernandez during that time, but maybe they might have found something older than that. I'm not sure. But part of the book collection that the Jesuit had before their expulsion from the Philippines in 1978 were transferred here. So yung Jesuit collection na binuo nila were transferred to the UST when they were expelled in the Philippines. They also established the Library of San Juan de Letran in 1669 and the Library of the Convent of Santo Domingo in Intramuros until 1941, until it transferred. Okay, okay, here is the photo of the tower and facade of the Colegio de San Juan de Letran along Aduana Street in Intramuros, which was cited by Sunga and Santos and De Jesus in 2000. Now we have the Jesuit libraries wherein they were expelled and they returned to the Philippines nga, which includes the Library of the College of San Ignacio and College of San Jose in 1583 and 1601 respectively, which are the two colleges that shared the same library. So also are the Library of the College of San Felipe de Austria in 1640 to 1644 and the Library of the Mission House in Palapag Samar in 1963, as well as the Library of the Ateneo Municipal and the Casa Misiones, which was destroyed by a fire. So here are the photos from the book actually of the facade of the Ateneo de Manila along Andes Street in 1989. And the Library of the Ateneo Municipal of Manila, which is a courtesy of the Ateneo Archives and cited by Hernandez in 1996. So here the Ateneo de Manila before its destruction by fire in 1932, again photo courtesy of the Ateneo Archives. And lastly, we have the Recollects. So the Recollect libraries includes the Library of the Convent of San Nicolas in Intramuros in 1608 to 1945, which contained more than 7,000 books. The Library of San Sebastian Church and Convent in 1621. The Recollect Library and Archives in 1994, medyo recent, which contains 12,000 volumes in holdings. And they have the oldest book in the collection, which is Historia General de Filipinas by Juan de la Concepcion, dated 1788. Librarians on record would be Father Hino Bangkaya and Owen Maturan. Aside from these, other libraries established by this congregation would be the Daughters of Charity Libraries. What we know, the Library of San Isabel College in Intramuros, which established in 1632 and until the Second World War, was damaged during the Second World War, and the Library of La Concordia College in 1868 to 1945. So this is the photo of the old library in the La Concordia College, and it was at the beginning of the 20th century, courtesy of La Concordia Archives. Okay, it can be summed up that the Catholic religious orders have established these libraries for two purposes. What would be them? What would be this? First is to support the need for their order for intellectual development and repository of their records. And second, to support the school or the learning institution they have established. So for their own needs as a congregation and for their intellectual needs, and second, for the schools that they have established. As we have noticed, many of these library support schools or part of a school system. So it also reflects that this was an established management of libraries and even designated librarians during this specific time. First, in the Philippine Islands, as mentioned in these records, this may not be the totality of all the libraries established by the religious orders, but we can see a pattern. We can see a good overview of the many libraries established during this period. As we also have noticed, most of the libraries were destroyed by natural calamities such as fire, um, uh, and even wars destroyed some of this collection. Most of the surviving remnants of these libraries are part of the early collections of present-day big libraries and are mostly attributed to the rare books collection in the Philippines. Since printing was introduced by the Catholic religious, some of this collection can be classified as Filipiniana rare books as they fall under the criteria all books printed in the Philippines prior to 1945, which includes the Philippine Incunabula and the books printed in the Philippines from 1593 to 1640. Okay. Let me proceed to the next theme of the Catholic or Christianity influence with libraries would be the theme Catholicism, education, and libraries. So establishment of schools was not the priority of missionaries who came to the Philippines, but rather found it's a mean for evangelization. So they established school for evangelization purpose also. As early missionaries were also learned scholars, they found the need to educate. They have established learning institutions supported by libraries, which steered up the creation of a National Association of Catholic Education Institution in 1941, which was later contributed to the educational accreditation we presently know. So ito yung link na gusto na we saw. The accreditation of libraries partly emerged from this association. So yes. Early elementary education can be traced in the Philippines to the Augustinians. When they arrived in Cebu in 1565, they started school that taught the Christian religion to the children of datus. The Franciscans started what we know now as the elementary school, and they also taught Filipino practical arts. The start of the Jesuit education in the Philippines was pushed by Pedro Chirino in Iloilo in 1592, and they taught students who also used the school as residents with the idea of turning them into catechists who will become evangelizers to people in their own area. So parang seminary type din. In 1581, Bishop Domingo de Salazar wrote to the King of Spain to express the need for a college to educate priests. The college was opened in 1596 and was named Colegio de la Compañía. This college was administered by the Jesuit priests. By 1733, the institution was renamed University of San Ildefonso, and the University of San Ignacio from its very beginning had a printing press. From it came out the grammaticas or the lexicos and the vocabularios or dictionaries written by professors from the university, people with long experience in the Philippines. The Dominicans established the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, one of the earliest well-known school in the Philippines in 1620. And this was important since not only did the school accepted orphans as students, their college also educated men who were employed in the civil service and ecclesiastical life in the Philippines. So, yes. An instruction was given to Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas by Philip II in 1589 to establish a school for Spanish girls in the Philippines. This led to the creation of the Colegio de Santa Potenciana in 1594. And the college offered basic education to orphan Spanish women. The Confraternity of Santa Mesa de la Miscordia erected a new college for women in 1632 and named it as Santa Isabel. In 1862, these two colleges were fused to form the College of Santa Isabel, or the Colegio de Santa Isabel, which offered similar education as in Europe. The Jesuits, on the other side, instituted by Captain General Don Fernando Norsagaray in 1895, who took charge of the primary school of 30 boys. The institution was called Escuela Pia of Manila. The institution was elevated to a college of secondary teaching by Queen Isabel II of Spain in 1865 and was renamed Ateneo Municipal de Manila. Catholic schools built during the Spanish colonization continued to function during the American period, but were faced with a lot of difficulties. Public schools had better quality education as compared to Catholic schools. The early 1900s also saw the arrival of new religious congregation in the Philippines. Their arrival paved way to the founding of more Catholic schools in the Philippines, in the country. And these religious congregation were the following: the ICM sisters, who joined the CICM, the Holy Spirit Sisters, who joined the SVDs, the Sisters of Saint Paul de Chartres in 1904, and the Benedictine Sisters in 1906, the Franciscan Missionaries of Mary, and the Good Shepherd Sisters in 1912. So this congregation also established schools, Catholic schools, as we know. And it can be summed up that Catholic education laid the foundation of the education in the Philippines through the Catholic schools, which contribution spans from the development of science and other disciplines to the preservation of dialects manifested in the grammar and catechetical books like the Doctrina Christiana. These accounts mentioned may not explicitly describe the contribution of the educational system established by the Catholic religious to the development of libraries in the Philippines. Rather, it is assumed that with the establishment of Catholic schools, universities, seminaries, and other learning institutions, libraries on the side also flourished to support the academic needs of these educational institutions. So as I have mentioned, the Catholic schools, the many Catholic schools established in the Philippines give birth to the establishment of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. So this is the logo, or the this. Despite the reforms in the Philippines educational system, they introduced by the Americans, the Catholic education has withstood and adapted to the waves of changes until the present day. It has become responsive to the needs of the Philippine educational system. In 1940, an auxiliary board of the Archdiocese of Manila was created to address the educational concerns and cooperation among Catholic schools, and to collectively respond not only to the urgent educational issues, but also to societal issues. That's why on February 2, 1941, the Constitution of the Catholic Education Association of the Philippines, or CEAP, was drafted, and they elected their officer. And what would be the link or the importance of CEAP to the libraries? So at first, CEAP was composed only of schools within the Archdiocese of Manila, but soon it extended its membership throughout the Philippines, throughout the different Catholic schools in the Philippines. And there is a CEAP subcommittee, or a committee, that continues to do library-related programs. So they call this as the SEAP Library Committee. And through the SEAP Library Committee, library-related concerns were addressed among its members. So because they give importance to libraries as part of the Catholic schools, so cooperation is evident through their programs and projects for the advancement of libraries, librarians, and the library profession. Another thing is another indirect contribution of Catholicism would be in the aspect of accreditation. So we are familiar with accreditation in schools, especially for librarians working in academic institution. Accreditation is a concept based on self-regulation which focuses on evaluation and continual improvement of education quality. And it is through the SEAP that the Philippine Accrediting Association of Schools, Colleges, and Universities, or PAASCU, one of the established accrediting agencies in the Philippines, was born. PAASCU is a service organization that aims to accredit academic programs that meet commonly accepted standards of quality education. So PAASCU's history can be traced back with the SEAP's Accreditation Committee, which was founded in 1954 to facilitate the voluntary accreditation of SEAP colleges and universities. So at first, PAASCU was for the SEAP, for the Catholic Schools Association of Colleges and University. So on the initial meeting, even in the initial meeting of PAASCU, they drew up a manual of accrediting with self-survey forms with 8 different areas, and one of them is the library. The library is one of the big areas that is being viewed by the accreditation or in PAASCU. So by November 1957, 11 SEAP colleges and universities has undergone an institutional self-survey and been visited by an outside accreditation team. So this is where the first permanent accreditation association of the Philippines marks the end of the task of the SEAP Accreditation Committee, which is now PAASCU, and marked the birth of an incorporated association as PAASCU. In December 2, 1957, PAASCU was registered as a corporation in SEC in the Philippines, and it also extended its membership to all private colleges, universities, high school, both sectarian and non-sectarian. So it doesn't just stop from Catholic schools and Catholic university. It also accredits now many universities and schools. So yeah. Okay. And the last part of the last theme of Catholic influence in the library history would be on the present day religious collection and religious libraries. So now, obviously, so we have established churches. We have established the religion in the Philippines in itself, the Catholic religion in the Philippines. And currently, it is manifested in the religious collection, in the diversity and uniqueness also of the religious collection and the religious libraries that existed presently in the Philippines. So in order to showcase this or to describe this topic, we tried to present 3 institutions. So the Miguel de Benavides Library of the University of Santo Tomas, the Ralph B. Herring Library of the Loyola School of Theology, and the Archbishop Gabriel M. Reyes Memorial of the San Carlos Seminary. So I won't deal so much with the discussion on each, but I would like to present how vast and how successful their religious collections in terms of knowledge, in terms of content, and in terms of the subject on religion that these libraries has, because they are considered as religious libraries or special libraries sila. So here is the Miguel de Benavides Library of the Santo Tomas, which I have already mentioned that it is named after Miguel de Benavides because the core collection of his collection was donated to the library, and yes, and it is one of the biggest academic libraries that holds many rare books and even books relating to the religion, because they also support a seminary. And the history of the University of Santo Tomas from the Intramuros, of moving from Intramuros outside the from Intramuros and then going outside of the walls to its present location, it has evolved. The present-day Miguel de Benavides Library has evolved to the university library that supports various degree program in UST currently. And the extent of the library's religious collection can be found in one of its section, in a branch, which is the religion section and the ecclesiastical faculties library, respectively. So the religion section caters to the academic needs of college students in their theological courses. And while the the ecclesiastical faculties libraries, a branch of the library located at the ground floor of the father residence, provides materials for the students of theology and canon law. Okay. Another library that we explored or presented would be the Ralph G. Herring Library of the Loyola School of Theology. So ito naman, they describe this as the best theological library in Southeast Asia. This may not be referred to the physical appearance of the library, but rather to the books and periodicals of the library it holds. So the library was created from merging the materials from two Jesuit institutions, the San Jose Major Seminary and the Birchman's College, in 1955. So there. And the last one is the Archbishop Gabriel Reyes Memorial Library, which is the library of the San Carlos Seminary. So the San Carlos Seminary, located in Guadalupe, this library serves the Holy Apostles Senior Seminary and the Lorenzo Mission Institute, together with the San Carlos Seminary, for the education and the learning of its professors and seminarians. So the library was dedicated and named after the first Filipino Archbishop of Manila, Gabriel Reyes, Archbishop Gabriel Reyes. So major part of its collection includes books that was put together and through the dedication and initiative of the efforts of Father John P. Swanepoel, the first library director. And this collection covers religious and Catholic literature and references. So approximately 70% of the collection are on theology and religion, 15% on philosophy, and 15% on other matters. So here is the photo of the San Carlos Seminary in Manila. And now I've reached the conclusion part of this presentation, and has illustrated the various link between libraries and religion, particularly Catholicism. So with this, I think the point cited in this study has highlighted in a one way or another the role of Christianity, particularly Catholicism, in the development of libraries in the Philippines. The context shouldn't be disregarded in the study and the writing of history and development of libraries in the Philippines, because we can see that there is a big link. Most of the first in libraries were introduced by these religious orders. And this would further imply that the present stature of libraries and librarianship in the country has once rooted in the Catholicism influence. Okay. Another point that I would like to raise is that this could be a basis in analyzing the growth of libraries and in the library profession, as well as understanding how the identity of libraries and librarianship in the Philippines was shaped by religion. Possibly not just by the Catholicism or not just by Christianity, but the other religions in the Philippines. So I look forward to seeing researches related to the development of libraries in the Philippines that is traced or maybe influenced by other denominations or other religions, even different from Christianity. And lastly, this could provide a basis for future research who are interested in this interesting but often overlooked context within the library history, not just in the Philippines, but as well in other countries. So other countries who would study their library history would also look at the phase, how the libraries were developed to present day. So with this, I would like to end my presentation by saying thank you. Maraming salamat po and Copcon Cap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very informative lecture. So, for anyone who have questions, you may submit your question at the Q&A button at the bottom of our screen, or for those viewing via Facebook Live, you may use the comment section. So, we have a question here. You mentioned that Filipiniana Rare are books printed before 1945. What is the basis of this cutoff and why is 1945 set as the cutoff?
Okay, let me just refer to this question. Okay, this is not a definition actually this is not actually a definition na ginawa ko lang or maybe sinabi ko lang, but there is an explanation on the 1945 cutoff of rare books. This was actually inscribed in the IRR of the Republic Act number 166, which is the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, that says that all Filipiniana books published before 1945, so yun yung minention nila, 1945, it includes original manuscript, exceptional collection, and other publication of historical importance. So ano ba ang nangyari noong 1945? Bakit 1945 nga? So 1945 was the year when Manila was destroyed, and a lot of during the war. So in 1945 doon nangyari yung war, and this criterion was set by the National Library of the Philippines because it suggests that a big devastation of the war brought to the destruction of many Filipiniana materials, and most of these were printed before 1945, are now scarce and not easy to find. So ayun. So kaya 1945 yung naging cut-off ng law ng National Library because doon nangyari yung war na marami talagang materials ang nasira.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we have another question here from an anonymous attendee. Did the development of libraries in the Philippines influence the book publishing and printing press industry in the Philippines? How?
The development of libraries and in one way when we discuss or when we studied library history in LI school in our discussions with the introduction to libraries, So, and also as mentioned by Vicente Hernandez in his book, so na-illustrate ko nga that the libraries were brought by the Spaniards or by the religious orders. And as I have mentioned, they also brought the technology from Europe, which includes the printing press, and intertwined siya eh. When they build libraries, they also produce materials, religious materials. So in one way or another, we can say that they also affect or contributed to the development of printing press in the Philippines. So, yung nilalagay nilang collection dun sa first libraries or dun sa kanilang mga first collections na pinrint na dito sa Philippines, of course, it would be more easier for them kung sila na yung magpiprint, would be coming from the printing press that they also established. So, may link, and we can say that it affect or it helped develop din yung printing press in the Philippines.
Thank you, sir. So, yeah, kanina sabi niyo na the present stature of libraries and librarianship is once rooted in Catholicism's influence. So, where do we situate the secular libraries in this development? Did this just branch out from the religious or religion-sponsored libraries, or was it created specifically as a response to religion-sponsored libraries?
What do you mean by secular librarianship?
Secular libraries, like walang religion affiliation sila.
Okay, so non-sectarian in its sense. So basically, we believe that the development of formal libraries actually emanated from we copied a lot of the present development we have in library science from the Americans. So yung talagang organized way of doing the library work right now came from the Americans in our history. So yung mga first librarians ng National Library, yung nag-establish talaga ng system. Although there is the core of the National Library also came from the Spanish. But yun nga lang, we just want we cannot generalize. We cannot generalize that we often link yung library history ng Philippines with the Catholic roots. So hindi naman talaga siya ganon. Along the way, there are developments. It just so happened that these were the first. So these happened before dumating yung mga Americans. So before dumating yung mga formal systems of LIS or Library and Information Science practices and library official libraries na meron tayo ngayon. Siguro yung nung nag-establish na mga first public libraries, it was through yung hindi religious side but maybe dun sa government side. So nagkaroon na ng separation between the acts of the state and the acts of the church. So what I'm just trying to illustrate is that there is a influence from the religion in the development of the early practices of the early libraries and early librarians in the Philippines. But hindi naman talaga yun lang. So yan.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we have an interesting question here. UST has several books listed in the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, such as the 1543 book of Nicholas Copernicus. So do you know how the Dominicans were able to secure prohibited books and why? Is there an existing study which deals with prohibited books in the Philippines during the colonial era?
That would be an interesting topic to explore. Maybe historians would like to research that, and as well kung sino man yung may hawak nung collection na yun. But I'm not familiar with the history of prohibited books in the Philippines, but yun nga as mentioned doon sa presentation ko, there was a time in the history of the Philippines na Christian books lang yung pwedeng dalhin dito. So we don't know where they come from, but and we don't know. And actually, it's one interesting part of library history na gusto ko ring i-pursue, or gusto ko ring na I'm interested with, is the history of books. So how one book becomes like this, or the symbolism, the context of one book in terms of its yung tinatawag nga nating diplomatics ng libro. For example, yung paper na ginamit sa kanya, yung the way it was printed, how did it ended up, for example, even how did it ended up in one library. So that would be interesting, pero I'm not aware of prohibited books history. So
Okay, sir. There is a follow-up, but this one is kind of subjective. So, on the topic of prohibited books, some universities and government bodies are currently banning certain titles right now. What is your take on this?
okay, my take on that is, again, I would like to make a disclaimer that even though I'm working in a government agency, it doesn't reflect the stand of my agency. So yun muna. So on my personal take on this as a librarian, of course, I'm against book banning. I'm against censorship of materials, because we know that libraries are safe spaces, and it depends on the person on what information he or she may get from the library. But we have to give, or we have to provide materials to support all ideas. So judgment and critical thinking and information literacy is one of information literacy is one of the what we call this advocacies of librarians. So we instill yung information literacy with our students, with our clients. So at the same time, if these books are available in the libraries, then these people has the right to discern which information or ideas or ideologies they would like to pick up from these materials. But we cannot say yes to censorship. We have to protect or to make libraries as safe spaces for everyone. And yun yung take ko doon. So maybe it may not be the stand of these government universities. Actually, most of them are government public universities. But if I will say my stand, that would be.
Thank you very much, sir. So, okay. Next question is there an effort among Catholic schools to promote greater inclusivity in terms of access to their collections? The university libraries mentioned are very exclusive, open only to students. How about the general public? I am aware that one can always request access via a formal letter, but this is very reactive. Is there a proactive effort on the part of these schools to open their materials for the public?
Okay.
And isama ko na po yung isang question dito sa Zoom
Yes.
na medyo related. What can the church do nowadays to encourage more Filipinos to read or visit libraries?
Okay. Siguro yung first muna, I would like to clarify muna yung stand ng mga libraries, because Catholic university libraries or academic libraries are often private institutions. So now we categorize them as academic libraries. Academic libraries serves first and foremost yung kanilang clientele, which would be the school, the academe itself, the students, the teachers, the professors, or those scholars within the institution. So a different type of library na open to the general public would be the public library. So we have the National Library dito. So academic libraries, kung yung sinaservice talaga nila would be yung clientele nila, it's their decision. And as I have mentioned, they are a private institution, so we cannot impose. They have their own rules, but it would be good if they can allow access from the general public, of course with the fee sometimes, because that's how libraries work. And if they have, and if sila lang yung may materials regarding that, because they have the resources, for example. So, ang way naman siguro to balance that would be if the public library can discuss interlibrary loan with the academic library, and then that would be a win-win situation na i-access nung nung client sa public library yung material from academic library, pero hindi pa ako sure if that existed. But also you can also maybe kung sila lang talaga yung may materials about that, you can ask this institution. But promoting inclusiveness within the community from the general public, I'm not sure how can that be possible, but maybe through outreach of the libraries. May mga outreach activities din yung libraries, maybe that could be part of that. Tapos dun sa second question, I'm not from the Catholic Church, but I guess one way na nakita kong effort ng Catholic Church to encourage reading is through the publication. So yung publication through book fairs. Catholic organizations or Catholic groups join book fairs. So when they join book fairs, they sell books about at a very cheap price ng mga libro about, but the topic is about religion. So ayun, about the Bible, about stories for children. So this would be one way of encouraging many to read, magbasa. So rather than just watch and let's go back to the basics of the book. So anyway, I'm going beyond naman lang sa books lang din. So there are all other types of information that is accessible to everyone that is not in the form of a book. So nasa social, nasa online, nasa web, nasa virtual, so different kinds of materials. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. So we have a question here on Zoom from Apolonio Patron. Christianity and or religious congregations played major role on the history libraries and or librarianship. Is it still a relevant factor considered in contemporary times? Is religion still influential on how libraries and librarianship be studied or be improved?
Okay, so as I have mentioned, this research is particularly on the library history. So pag history naman na siya, when we discuss it in contemporary times, we look back on what positive aspects, on how things work during that time. So when it comes to the present day management, sobrang ibang-iba na siya talaga. Iba na yung rules natin, iba na yung pinag-uusapan natin. Ngayon pinag-uusapan na namin how to increase the number of librarians. So ang pinag-uusapan na natin how to provide better services, facilities for the libraries. How can we encourage more people to the library, or what advocacies will the library promote? So ganun na yung pinag-uusapan natin. But it's also interesting to look back on where and how these advocacies or these things came into picture. So saan nagsimula yung mga bagay-bagay? Siyempre, this is history. So when we discuss history, it doesn't mean na relevant pa siya sa present day, but it's history. It's part of the books. It's part of what you studied. And when you study history, I'm not a history major. Maybe Christian would be able to clarify this. But when you study history, you try to understand where things began and what happened on that past. What lessons can we learn from that past? And then these lessons, are they relevant, or will this help us in our future direction? So yung heritage ba na pinag-uusapan lang naman natin dito is yung heritage ng Catholicism or ng Christianity. What would be the positive effect that it contributed to the modern day libraries and librarianship profession that we have? So I hope we see it in that view or in that way. Salamat for the question.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a question here, medyo related sa sinabi nyo. The question is, aside from their heritage and history, does libraries mentioned in the presentation have other peculiarities? What makes them different from other libraries? May age-old traditions ba sila? Unique customs, etc.?
Yeah. Yes. Possibly, so since hindi ko rin naman na-experience or nakita physically yung mga libraries na yun and may compare siya sa present day libraries because these are just based on records, based on the secondary materials. So yung mga na-mention doon is peculiarities. Meron din silang mga early library regulations. Kung paano nagsimula yung library regulations, for example, in Europe or in the US, there are some regulations din na meron silang ginagawa doon sa libraries nila. So maybe since they protect the book, siguro mga nilalock nila yan. So we don't know, but we can only speculate and we can only trace crumples of bits and pieces of narratives from historical records. So that would be a good topic of another research din siguro, yung peculiarities. If we can try to reconstruct ano ba yung itsura niya, ano yung sinasabi nila, bakit laging nasusunog or bakit laging nasisira yung mga libraries na yon, or meron din bang book banning during that time? Definitely there would be book banning, or meron din bang mutilation, for example. These are the issues na meron tayo ngayon, mutilation of library material. So yung mga ganon. So that would be a good interesting research then. So
Thank you, sir. So, last two questions. Medyo overtime na pala tayo. So, this is in relation to the cutoff na 1945. Can you physically distinguish a book published in 1944 versus a book published in 1946, irrespective of publication date, just by looking at its physicality?
It's just the date. Parang sinasabi lang naman kasi na 1945 or earlier. I mean 1944 or 1945, tama yung minention niya, no? Or 1945 and 1946.
46, sir.
Okay, 1946 kasi nagbalik na yung printing. So parang they trying to normalize yung mga bagay-bagay. So mostly nang nawala, hindi ka na makakakita ng mga, halimbawa, nasira yung bahay or nasira yung mga libro ng 1945. So ibig sabihin naging rare na sila kasi hindi mo na siya pwedeng maulit muli na ma-print siya the same way as you printed it in 1945 or earlier. And then I think it's also a symbolic din kasi yung 1945 because nga yung war. Pero in terms of physicality ng materials, maybe yes, pwedeng i-argue philosophically na pwedeng magkamukha lang sila, or parang yes, they must be the same. But the thing is, nasira na yung press, nasira yung materials ng 1945. So paano makokopya ng the same yung these books in 1946 onwards? So maybe that would be the knowledge or the wisdom behind 1945. But that is a criterion na hindi naman ako yung nag-set. It's a criterion set by the law and by the National Library of the Philippines.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So, last question. What is your message to the general public to improve reading?
Oh yes, librarian. So, gusto ko lang din sabihin na through reading, we develop yung ating information literacy. We develop our sense of yung critical thinking na tinatawag natin. So I guess maraming benefits. So may nabasa pa nga ako that through reading, it improves your sleep. So it makes you sleep deeper pag nagbabasa ka. So maraming benefits ang reading, and a lot of information or a lot of materials are presently available with us with that. And siguro it will enhance our intellect, it will enhance our wisdom, it will help us in many forms of our in many facets of our lives. So just read. So yun lang, just read. Hindi naman necessarily na tapusin mo yung isang book ng isang upuan. You can start by reading newspaper or online articles that are reputable, hindi yung mga hindi yung mga balita na galing sa kung saan man na copy paste or something. So dahil sa dalas mo nagbabasa, alam mo na rin kung saan yung mga information na tama. So with that, we can develop our we can develop our skills in reading. So simulan lang natin sa maliliit na articles until makabasa na pata tayo ng isang paper in one reading or one book in one reading and so on. So start small and then maraming benefits din yung reading. So as a librarian, I want to promote reading also. So salamat.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for a very insightful discussion. So, okay. So to wrap up our session for today, I'd like to begin the announcements with the call for papers for the 4th Annual Intramuros Young Scholars Conference. This is ongoing and we are accepting Intramuros related papers that tell stories of either downfall, revival, sustainability, or adaptability, or any combination of these. Honoraria will be given for selected papers that will be presented via Zoom on December 12, 2022. For more information, please go to intramuros.gov.ph/YSC 2022. Okay, and next, I'd like to promote our social media pages. The Intramuros administration is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you miss any of our previous episodes or if you came in late today, you can still view them in our YouTube channel. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, for the latest updates about Intramuros, join our Viber community by scanning the QR code here. This is also posted on our social media accounts. And lastly, we have an online exhibit at Google Arts and Culture. You may check our digitized collections there. And that's all for now. Stay tuned for our announcement for the next ILS. And thanks everyone for joining our episode today.